we can leave, that's why we have the extra room. So remember, on this one, you're doing the intro, you're welcoming, no ceremony, what justice was handed. So this will wait until like a transition to Justice McKenna when she wraps.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Hello, good evening. Wonderful, wonderful to see everybody. Can you see me? Oh, great whistling. Aloha. Good evening and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us to honor an incredible person, a leader, a teacher, a scholar, and a dedicated community member who has made immeasurable contributions near and far through his life's work. I am, of course, referring to Emeritus Professor of Law, David Callies, whose retirement we are here to celebrate this evening. From the program, you will see that other speakers will elaborate upon David's myriad contributions, including his abundant legal scholarship. I swear I have at least one full bookshelf just dedicated to David's prolific work. And other speakers will also elaborate upon his tremendous impact on the study and the practice of law. Now, for my part, I have the distinct pleasure of speaking about David's contributions as a faculty member at the William S. Richardson School of Law, a school at which he served for 43 years as a professor. Thank you, David. Over these 4+ decades, Professor David Callies dedicated himself to the study and teaching of property law. He was an extraordinary teacher, an extraordinary mentor, a friend to administrators, faculty, and students alike. But his ultimate goal over a distinguished career at the law school was to shape and mentor his students to become exceptional attorneys. Now, as I am the dean with whom David worked the least, he promptly retired as soon as I started. David, I hope that was mere coincidence and that I should not take anything from that timing. I decided that I should reach out to my former colleagues and fellow deans for some shared remarks. But first, a message from President David Lassner. President Lassner is off island right now and sends his regrets, but he did share with me just a few brief remarks. And I quote, "David, I am sorry that I'm not able to join your celebration this evening. Mahalo for everything you have done over your long and productive career to help us all understand some of Hawaii's most thorny and important issues. I hope retirement is letting you spend time with Lori, who I think I've known longer than you. Best wishes for the next chapters of your life. Aloha, David Lassner." I also reached out, of course, to my immediate predecessor, Dean Avi Soifer. Now, you've heard Avi say previously that some say David is a curmudgeon. But Avi does not feel that way. I also heard from Avi that he greatly appreciates that David really, really cares about community. I think that's a testament that we see here tonight, because community cares about David in return. He shared with me that over the course of many years, he would see David show up at random places. For example, he recalls looking in the audience at the Chaminade Theater when Professor Chuck Lawrence was in a play by Anna DeVere Smith. And who did he see there? But David. Similarly, in terms of his commitment to community, Avi recalls that David always supported his junior colleagues, including with his nominations, including to the American Law Institute, and as well his introductions, both near and wide, and near and far, including with many of your contacts in Asia. Avi summed up that David is a, quote, great colleague and community member, one who could be counted on to show up and be present, and I would add, and to participate and assist and support. Avi noted that he and his wonderful wife, Lori, generously supported colleagues for years by hosting the School Beginnings event at which faculty and staff came together to start the new year. Avi sends his regrets and love. Now, I also had occasion and opportunity to reach out to former Dean Larry Foster, who I tracked down in Texas. He recently moved there, and he sends the following message, which I will read in full. Aloha from Houston. Over the decades I have known Professor Callies, our relationship has evolved. We met in the spring of 1982. I was a non-traditional first-year law student, so we were close in age. He was a brand new law faculty member at Richardson, and as I recall, this was his first year as a law professor. Now, my impressions were that he was very knowledgeable and also very rigorous, qualities that he retained and perfected over his years at Richardson. He was the Professor Kingsfield of Richardson. Does that sound familiar to any of you all? Later when we spoke, and later when I spoke to first-year law students, I used to jokingly say, David Callies has mellowed over the years. This comment was always met with nervous laughter from the students. A former assistant dean used to say during the orientation to incoming students, most of who had excelled as undergraduate students, embrace the C. A reference to Richardson's C curve then. Professor Callies and a few of his colleagues certainly embraced that C curve, much to the dismay of generations of students at Richardson. In 1987, when I returned to the law school, first as an associate dean for 8 years, and then as dean for 7, I effectively became his boss. Although the term, in quote, boss, does not typically describe the nature of the relationship between a dean and most any senior law faculty, I would concur. Later, when I stepped down, added Larry Foster, as dean, I became a faculty member, and we became colleagues. Along the way, most importantly, we became friends. David, enjoy your well-deserved retirement. Ahui ho, love, Larry Foster. And in closing, I will merely add, David, your impact and your achievements extend far beyond the 2,000 students benefiting from your experience and your wisdom. Your depth of knowledge and high standards continue to influence the entire Hawaii legal community just as much as your scholarship and expertise continue to bring worldwide recognition to the University of Hawaii and to Richardson Law School. On behalf of the law school, I offer my eternal gratitude to you. Thank you so much for everything you have done. It is deeply appreciated. Thank you. And I shall now turn it over to Professor Saxon.
Next up, we've asked Shelley Saxer, a professor at Pepperdine University in California, and welcome her. She's come all this way to celebrate with us. Thank you, Shelley. It's all yours.
Aloha, everyone. It is my great honor to be here today to talk about Professor David Callies and his contributions to the Legal Academy. David is a legend in the fields of land use, property law, and state and local government law. In addition to his more than 20 books, he has written over 100 articles and chapters on topics such as eminent domain, regulatory takings, the public trust doctrine, fair housing and exclusionary zoning, hydraulic fracking, and so much more. His work has been instrumental in shaping the way we think about property rights and land use regulations and development. David's insights, expertise, and legacy will continue to live on in the countless students, scholars, and practitioners who have been inspired and influenced by his work. His highly acclaimed Regulating Paradise has made an impactful contribution to land use law in Hawaii. I have to admit, when I first heard the title of David's book, I couldn't help but think of John Milton's epic poem, Paradise Lost. But as it turns out, David's book is not about the fall of man and the expulsion from the Garden of Eden. Much more interesting to those of us here, it's about land use and development in one of the most beautiful places on earth. David's contributions to the Legal Academy go beyond his scholarship, however. He's been an outstanding teacher and mentor over the years, inspiring students to think critically about the law and its role in society. He has involved his students in his scholarship, and the dedication to teaching is evident in the numerous awards he's received, including the University of Hawaii Regents Medal for Excellence in Teaching. David has also been an active member of the Legal Academy and community beyond the University of Hawaii. He has served on numerous advisory boards and commissions. He's been a sought-after speaker at conferences and symposia around the world. His expertise has also been recognized by his peers, who have appointed him to leadership positions in the American Law Institute and the Association of American Law Schools. In 2015, the Owners Council of America, a nationwide network of eminent domain and property rights, I'm sure there might be several of you here, recognized David with its Crystal Eagle Award for his lifetime scholarship about land use, eminent domain, and regulatory takings, both nationally and internationally. David's retirement marks the end of an era for the University of Hawaii, but his contributions to the Legal Academy will endure for years to come. Indeed, I've had the pleasure of working with David on several projects over the years, and I've learned so much from him. He has inspired me to be a better scholar and teacher, and he has enriched my life with his friendship, support, and mentorship. Mahalo, David, for your many years of service and dedication to the Legal Academy. We are honored to have been part of your journey, and we look forward to seeing all the great things you will accomplish in the years ahead. Congratulations to you and to Lori on your retirement.
Thank you very much, Shelley. And Dwight, Miriam. He might get the award for coming the furthest from Connecticut. David's colleague in the practicing bar, the American Bar Association, and a whole bunch of other things. So, Dwight.
All right. Well, David and Laurie and Dean Nelson and all of you who have joined together for this celebration, thank you for this opportunity to participate. I first lived here from 69 to 72, you can imagine why, and then came back in the mid-80s to represent the city and county in some litigation, which David and I worked together. He and I have known each other for all of my career. We're close in age. He got about a 10-year start on me because I had a little time in the service. And so I've got to see his work all along, and we've remained very close. I want to just make two observations. Dean Nelson already touched on some of this. Shelley, thank you for what you had to say. The Owners Council of America award that he got was extraordinary. He joined Vicki Bean of NYU Law School, who was one of the national leaders in land use. He also joined Henry Smith, who was at Yale Law School before he went to that law school that we refer to as the other law school up in Cambridge. And Steve Eagle. That's great company. That says a lot. And so the two things that I want to say about David that you may not have considered as I have as someone who works across the country and overseas is, number one, he's not just an academic. He's an academic for sure and done these 20 books and 100 plus articles, but he's somebody who works for people who actually do the work every day. He's like an interlocutor, stands on the edge of the stage, interpreting what the actors do, translating it into things that people can do every day. We know his best known books, but actually two of his books have been great and very important for practitioners on development agreements, including one that's really a toolkit. And most academics don't do that. The second thing is that he has been extraordinary in developing the reputation of this law school internationally. Not only to get this Owners Council of America award, but he also is a fellow of the American Institute of Certified Planners. I happen to be one myself. There are 14 of them in Hawaii, which is an extraordinarily large number. There are only 500 in the world, and I bet only 50 of them are lawyers. He also is a fellow of the College of American Real Estate Lawyers, an extraordinary achievement in and of itself, about 1,000 people. And he has, I'll tell you this one last anecdote of what he does that's so extraordinary and so important with regard to the reputation of the law school and how he has mentored so many. 12, 13 years ago, and you'll remember this, we were in a room and when Rochelle Alterman wanted to do a book called Takings International. And the ABA publishing people said, this book's not going to go anywhere. We're not going to make any money with this. David fought for Rochelle Alterman, who is at Technion in Haifa, Israel, and we got that book published, and you remember what a great success it was. So his relationship with people around the world and back in the lower 48 has really made the reputation of the law school, and for that, you should all be forever thankful, especially you, Dean Nelson, to inherit that legacy. So thank you very much for being here tonight. Thank you, David, my friend, and Laura.
I'd like to call Cal Chipchase up. Cal will speak on behalf of David's, I don't know, how many students, present and former, and especially his research assistants. Cal?
Thank you, Rob. I'm Cal Chipchase, and I was David's research assistant now more years ago than I care to remember. And I was asked to say a few words about David on behalf of all of his former research assistants. And that got me thinking about the impact that David has had on my life, working for him, and then knowing him and becoming his friend. It's one of the things that kept me in Hawaii. It's certainly the reason that I've taught at the law school for most of the last 20 years. And it's certainly the reason that I do the kind of work that I do today. And in fact, a few years ago, in a litigation matter, I got to retain David as my expert witness and examine him on the witness stand. It was a special moment, I think, for me, and I hope for him too. But that got me thinking about all the other lives he's touched. And then thinking, well, how do you really measure his impact, the influence that he has had for all of these years? And so I figured you can't do it. All you can really do is maybe capture it in some numbers. And so he has been a licensed attorney for more than 50 years. and for more than 45 of those, he taught at Richardson. He, as you heard, has published or co-authored more than 21 books and more than 100 articles in peer-reviewed journals. He's given more than 550 speeches. He has had more than 100 research assistants at UH. But the number that most impacted me is that he's taught more than 4,000 students in Hawaii, on the mainland, and around the world. That's 4,000 students touched by David, 4,000 careers touched by David, 4,000 lives touched by David and what he did and his dedication. And then you go from there and you think about all the lives and all the people who've been touched by people he touched, and the ripple effect that he has had not only in our community, not only in the legal community, but around the country and around the world. And so when I thought through all of that, I came back to where I began. You can't really know the impact that he has had. All you can really know is that he is truly one of a kind. And all you can do is say thank you. Thank you, David, for all you did for me and all you've done for so many people. Enjoy your retirement.
Thank you, Cal. And another one of David's former students, Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of Hawaii, Sabrina McKenna. Justice McKenna? And we should have heard the microphone.
Aloha, everyone. I'm truly honored to have been invited to introduce David, the person that needs no introduction. But as you know, he leaves an amazing legacy as a law professor who excelled not just as a teacher, but also as a prolific scholar and a community contributor. And we've heard about, his bio in terms of all of his publications and some of his community contributions, but I want to add a few highlights. He received his undergraduate degree from DePaul University in Indiana, his JD from the University of Michigan, and his LLM from the University of Nottingham in England. And before coming to Hawaii, he practiced local government and land use law in Chicago. And he came here as a visitor in 1977 and as a full-time professor in 1978. So Diane Hastert was in his first class, and let's see, when I took Real Property 1 in 1980, I believe I was his second class as a full-time professor. Everyone that took a class from David at the William S. Richardson School of Law, raise your hand. Look at these hands. Look at these hands, and please keep your hands raised. Thank you, thank you. As Cal has mentioned, he has touched thousands of us. Highlights of his community contributions include being an elected member of the American Law Institute. He served on the committee that amended the restatement of Property the Third, and he's on the advisory committee to comment on drafts of the restatement of law Property the Fourth. He's also been past chair of the HSBA section on real property and financial services. Many of you are members. Past chair of the ABA section on state and local government law. Past chair of the American Association of Law Schools section on state and local government law. We've talked about his scholarship, more than 20 books and book chapters and more than 100 law review articles. But my administrative law clerk, who was one of his research assistants, 2005 graduate of our law school, wanted to be sure I mentioned how generous David has been with his former law students and research assistants by doing something that not all law professors do. He has been giving co-authoring credit, and he's done so on more than 20 articles to law students who have helped with his research, including my administrative law clerk, Adrian, to whom David gave co-authoring credit on a 2005 law review article entitled Privatization and the Providing of Public Facilities through private means. That's quite topical right now, isn't it? And by the way, that made me think, why don't we judges and justices give credit to our law clerks for the opinions they work on? That's food for thought, right? But I want to now turn to David as a teacher also. I feel so privileged to have been able to take his class in 1980 when I was a first-year law student. I'll never forget learning about the bundle of sticks, Penn Central and regulatory takings, land use regulation, just compensation. But you know what it is? It's that David challenged me like I had never been challenged before as a student. I never worked harder in any class as I tried to live up to your expectations. And as a consequence, I elevated my own expectations of myself. And that's what good teachers do, David. Adrian, who was David's student more than 20 years after me, tells me that David continued to challenge his students in a good way. She remembers that the 2Ls warned her 1L class to be ready for property. They characterized his property class as the real paper chase, but also let the 1Ls know that David's bark was worse than his bite. And that's definitely true. David, your teaching has had a lasting influence on all of us that had the privilege of learning from you. So it's no wonder you were awarded the University of Hawaii Board of Regents Excellent in Teaching Awards, and we've heard about your many other awards. But on another personal note, I'm also privileged to have been able to call David my friend from the time I was in law school and from the time I was a law professor. And I sometimes think that David and I have a karmic connection as I live in and my children were raised in the house his wonderful wife, Lori, and her sister, Elaine, who is here, grew up in as a child. So, we have a connection. It was so amazing when I was at dinner at your house and we're like, oh yeah, I used to live on Pahoa. Which house? Wait a minute, that's my house. That was amazing. What an amazing evening. David, you're always going to be remembered as a legendary law professor, scholar, and community contributor. And although you've retired from the law school, I know you're going to continue to contribute in so many ways. And so thank you on behalf of the entire community for your many years of service, teaching, and friendship to so many of us. Can everyone join me now in recognizing David with a well-deserved round of applause? So David, I ask that you come up here now. And I'm also going to ask that Dean Camille Nelson come back up and to share a few thoughts before we hear from David. Camille?
So it's my great privilege and honor to present you with a small token of our appreciation, David. And I also want to thank some dear friends for the wonderful wrapping job that Associate Dean Nick Marquet and his husband did on this. But this is how much we love you. He took it home and wrapped it and got the ribbon and everything. But David, this is the least we could do, and it's not nearly enough. I think one of the most beautiful things that I hope you take away from this is that you are not only appreciated, but you are loved. And you are loved for the ways in which you uplifted others and your myriad contributions. So with that, I'm going to put this down, I'm going to give you a hug, and I'm going to give you your gift.
It's not from Amazon. It's not. We put it in a different box. It says to me, actually it says David Callies, it says to me, in recognition of 43 years of service to the state of Hawaii, awarded upon retirement, the University of Hawaii, 5/31/2021. Thank you so much. This will have a treasured place in our home. I appreciate it. Thank you very, very much. There's only about 15, 20 pages. I told my guy to give 45 minutes. My class is usually an hour and 10 minutes, so I'll try to cut that in half. Hopefully that will probably do it. And you'll pardon me, one aspect of being past 39 is that I need a little help in reading as well as in hearing, so I will use these glasses for a bit. You know, it's been quite a journey since 1977, and I hope you'll bear with me with a couple of anecdotal remembrances. When I joined the faculty, it was not the William S. Richardson School of Law, an honor to both Bill Richardson, affectionately known as CJ, and the school, but it was just the UH Law School. It was tenuous. We were down in the quarry. We were stuck in the quarry because the regents were not happy when the school rejected a building on campus because we were going to have to share it with somebody. And ABA and ALS practice was not to share, and they kind of regarded that as a kick in the head. And so we were exiled to the quarry for about 7 or 8 years. It was a great experience because we all hung out in the wooden buildings. We had a sand lot there where the students and the faculty would play volleyball. There was the classrooms in the rain, the tiles would begin to fall off, so you had to watch what you said and how long you taught. It was truly a different experience. We were kind of pioneers. And I think the only other person that remembers that well is Professor William B.C. Chang, who's back there, who's been in the law school even longer than me. So if you've got questions that want fair cases, see Bill, he'll tell you about it. It was truly something different. We had a visitor at that time, and a well-known person from England named Sir Desmond Heap. And he was a solicitor of the city, and he was the one who sold London Bridge to that developer in Arizona who thought he was getting Tower Bridge, and instead got this sort of non-distinct bridge that anybody could have built. And so Desmond came out, and he noticed that his first paycheck, he came as a visitor, shared by the law school and planning school, and he noticed that his first paycheck had taxes deducted from it. And being an experienced lawyer, Sir Desmond knew that the tax treaty between the United States and England forbade either side taking taxes out. So he complained through channels in his very British, very proper way, and it worked his way up to the head of the Accounting and General Services, DAGS. And so the gentleman said, "Thank you, Sir Desmond, we'll fix it. I just have one question for you. Who gave you my phone number?" This was very typical in the early years of the law school, and maybe more than just the law school. The next thing that happened what was of interest was that the most powerful, no offense, Camille, but the most powerful dean we've ever had was with us for 2 years, and that was Marv Anderson. His title the whole time was interim acting dean. That's all he ever was. But he built the law school at Hastings, and he was brought out to help build ours. And he was the one that managed to get the new law school building underway. It was put in place where it is because it was originally supposed to go on the parking structure. It didn't go on the parking structure because F Tower at the building business school collapsed, or began to collapse. And so no engineer was certified that the building of the law school on top of the parking structure would work. So with great speed, he managed to get the architect to flip the building like an omelet, or whatever that is that gets flipped over. I'm not a cook, as Lori well knows, barely fry an egg. And so there it was, and he got the building built the way it was. The reason there are no windows on that side of the library towards the parking structure is that it was supposed to be looking into a classroom building and there'd be no views. So that's how we got that up. But shortly after that had to be one of the most interesting, again, I think, aspects. I got ahead of myself. Before that, the law school was once going to be in the old post office building. And the old post office building was going to be right downtown next to the legislature. And so a then administrator, who will here be nameless, asked me, who cannot be nameless, if I would look at the Ceded Lands Act and see what might happen. Was it on ceded lands? If it was, then it could be donated to the law school and the university without cost, minus the cost of the building, which Senator Inouye said he would be glad to see that would be fixed so it wouldn't cost us much money. Well, the university didn't want the law school that close to the legislature, thinking it would then become an arm of the legislature and out of its control. And the law school couldn't figure out how students and faculty would park. So that's how we ended up staying in Manoa and getting the building that we had. In a few years later, my colleague John Barkey and I are famous, notorious, or whatever, swimming a lot. And the pool was right across from the law school. It opened up the same day the law school opened in 1978 in August. And the theory was that the snack shop, which was run at that time by another organization, would serve various kinds of sandwiches and food for people on the way to the swimming pool from upper campus after we moved. So one day I came back on summer vacation, from spring break rather, and my favorite tuna fish sandwich had gone from 90 cents to $1.80, and I thought that was a pretty extreme amount. So I worked my way up the food chain, no pun intended, and I managed to get to the person who was in charge of it and said, "Oh yeah, we know who you are, Professor Callies. So you know, just for you, 90 cents." I said, no, you don't understand. You know, this is a healthy snack. This is something good to eat, and so there are a lot of students that eat tuna fish. So wait for it, right? The next day, the tuna fish sandwich was down to 90 cents, and all the other sandwiches stayed at $1.90. So it's an interesting, it's not just an interesting place to teach. This is a place where I came, not only because I was so taken with Hawaii, but because property and land use is front page stuff. In most of the United States, with the possible exception of California and Chile, it's on the back page after the business section. Nobody cares. Ho-hum zoning. In Hawaii, the state runs on property. It runs on property law. It runs on property transactions. The section on property and financial services exceeds 500, I think around 500 people. So it's an important subject, and it was a real interesting thing to come and teach something that was so vital to the state and to what progressed. So to the extent that I've contributed all to it, I'm happy to have done it. It was certainly my intention to help out, but certainly not to spend 43 wonderful years here as a professor and to deal with so many folks. A word about CJ and his contribution in that way as well. Chief Justice Richardson had a huge impact, clearly from a land use and property perspective on the state and water rights and so forth. And to say we did not always agree would be something of an understatement. In fact, I think that the only case that I totally agreed with was where he cited one of my articles. And of course I agreed with that because I was very nice of him and I always was right when I wrote my articles. But he didn't really care about, in establishing the law school and in supporting the law school, he did not care about the politics. He cared about merit and research and writing and doing something with the brand. When my first casebook on land use came out many years ago, he was pleased as punch that there were Hawaiian cases in a nationally published casebook by then West Publishing Company. He didn't care that in my notes on the cases, on the decisions he wrote, that I tore into him in the reasons. He laughed and he said, listen, it was almost like, so why don't you spell my name right? It was just such a pleasure for him to see something come out of the law school that he's largely responsible for creating and that bears his name, that would have something come out of it like a casebook. It's one last anecdote, if I may. When the offer was made to me, it was blocked at the Board of Regents level. It was blocked by the powerful and well-known attorney in town, Wallace Fujiyama. And Wally was someone to be reckoned with. Turns out that what happened was that I had made some comment about the rail. The rail was still, back then it was still a big issue. And I was alleged to have said something that I didn't say. The law school, through a environmental organization, had a tape of it. They played the tape. They said, this is not true. Give the faculty, a big A for guts. They said, I don't care whether Ben Cayetano is objecting to this. Regent Fujiyama, chairman, he didn't say it. We're sticking by our recommendation. And they won. Postscript, again, in terms of what the law school really stood for, or what the leaders who wanted to stand for. Wally Fujiyama saw that I got elected. Once you're in the pecking order, as Dwight knows, you got to commit a major crime if you don't become chair once you become secretary, wherever we started. And so I became chair, and Wally heard about it. And Wally at that time was pretty interested in being the ABA. And he was so thrilled that somebody from the law school, somebody from the university community, got to be an ABA section chair. Nobody told him that it was one of the smallest sections in the ABA, right? It wasn't property, wasn't tax, wasn't torts, wasn't any of that stuff. But he was so thrilled that the next law school party we had, he came and shook my hand. Bearing the hatchet, and that's the way it went. It was all about merit, all about research, all about teaching. So that's sort of it in a nutshell. I am so honored to be here. My kohai, my mentor in Japan, a very wise gentleman from an old samurai family, tried to inculcate me with some of the values in Japan that have served Japan very well, and have made the country, what it has been over the centuries. And he said, David, wise men say only one thing. Then he sit down. That was about the only time that he was ever direct with me, because all the subtle stuff for which Japan is famous, and for which Justice McKenna knows a whole lot about. As many of you know, she's totally fluent in Japanese. We use her shamefully. Out she comes, and the Japanese visitors saying, oh, wait, okay, here comes a Howie's going to try and speak Japanese. This is going to be a joke. And then Sabrina charms them with basic Japanese and absolutely unaccepted. It's wonderful. So thank you for that, Sabrina. So it's an interesting thing that's what he told me, and at least I have tried to do it. So I'm going to try and do it here. I've got two more things that I want to do. One is to conclude, but before I do that, I want to give my sincere thanks for everyone who helped to make this possible. For the folks who spoke on my behalf, thank you. I am touched. I am humbled by your comments. I am particularly humbled that Sabrina, I think this is your third round with me on one thing or another. Please give Sabrina a hand, because she was just awarded an award by the American Bar Association, and that is, because I'm very bad at reading it, the Margaret Brent Award for distinguished service, given only once a year. And it's a huge, big honor for someone from Hawaii to get. So thank you, Cal and Dwight, Sabrina, Shelley, and I thought I thanked Ben before. He's gone, so the heck with it. He had to leave. So, and I can't thank Bob and Rob and Mark enough for what they have done and all the time they put in to help put this together. They're wonders in their own ways. Rob is a recently elected member of the American Law Institute, and Mark of ACRO, American College of Real Estate Attorneys, and they're both busy and they've got a whole lot to do. I want to thank in particular Dean Nelson for taking the time to come. She's got a lot on her plate right now. Deaning a law school is a lot of work, and especially after COVID and getting things back on track, it takes a very great amount of time as well. I want to thank the dear friends and colleagues that contributed to a video which is back there. It certainly touched my heart. And at this point, it seems like a very good time to thank my wonderful wife, Lori, who has been mentioned several times. She married an unabashed alpha male who is very difficult to live with about between 20 and 90% of the time, depending on how you count. Everyone tells me that I'm a more human being as a result of that marriage. And I leave it to you whether I become at all human. That sort of counter my brand. I'll do what I can to live with that. Thank you, Lori, for wife and partner, for all that you contributed. I want to thank the Cades team for spending so much time to help put this together, as well as Chitty Berries and what you have, hopefully, for the food. The sponsors that are on the back of the program, thank you so much for making the contribution. It has helped immeasurably. And I will leave you then with my conclusion, my saying one thing. It's all about the institution, stupid. It's about the law school. What contributes to the school is all good. What detracts from it is not. Our personal agendas are irrelevant to the purpose of the law school. The only justification for doing anything that harms the law school is if you're going to replace it, because the institution needs to be there. The bar knows it, the academy knows it, and especially all the students who have graduated from UH know that. I was amazed and surprised to hear a senior partner from a major firm stop me in the street and say, you know how important the law school is to our community. Not just the teaching, but how important it is to the community. Please, everybody, keep that in mind. This is your law school. I'm glad for the association, but it's not mine anymore. It's your law school. There are your teachers, your graduates, your dean, and that ultimately is what's important. We're graduating lawyers, not law professors. There's room for one Yale, all due respect to the captain over there, about Yale. We can afford one in the country. We can't afford more than one. We're here to teach lawyers to practice law. We're not here to tell them what to think, but how to think. How to think like lawyers, to get a good rounded education, and what you want to do after that is up to you. One of the students with whom I crossed swords with over and over and over again in law school, who went on to become, a lot of the people who will recognize the name, but I'll leave it out, practiced law for 6 years first with David Key. I hope I got the firm right, because that's not good if I didn't. And then went on to do his passion by becoming head of the Sierra Club and going on from there. But he learned the law first. He practiced first. You cannot be an advocate to any cause in Hawaii if you don't understand tax, wills and trusts, torts, property, contract law, bankruptcy, you name it. It's necessary, and that's what it takes. So please support that institution and don't do it any damage. It's been through a lot. It's still here. It's got Bill Richardson's name on it, and it's a treasure in the community. That's my one thought. Thank you very much.
David Callies, everyone. And we can't let you leave without the final word from my former law partner, Mark Murakami of Damon Key. And to please everyone, thank especially Mark and his firm. Mark took the lead in planning this event. All of the nice facilities here are courtesy of Mark's firm, as well as the people staffing this. So Mark, take us home.
Thank you, everyone. When I was on the law review, the University Law School was celebrating its 25th anniversary. And so the law review decided to have a retrospective and consult with the original idea folks that came out to help brainstorm a law school at the University of Hawaii. I was assigned to the dean of the Bolt Hall Law School at the University of California at Berkeley. And so I called up there, because we didn't have Google back then, to the young kids in the room. And they said, well, he's not here anymore. He's at the Smithsonian Institute as the president of the Smithsonian Institute. And so, eager to get this law review in the bag, I called the Smithsonian Institute and worked my way up and called Professor, or President then, I. Michael Heyman. And so I said, we're doing a retrospective about the University of Hawaii Law School. It's the 25th anniversary. And so he said, well, send me the course catalog and the mission statement. And so I put all these materials together and mailed it to him. And he calls me back about 2 weeks later and he said, this is not the law school that we intended to create in 1971. The law school we intended to create was, the concept would be that Hawaii residents would go do 1 year at a traditional law school with torts, contracts, civil procedure, and then they would come back and it would be more of a journeyman apprenticeship program where you'd learn the practical skills of the heavy clinical thing. And so I said, well, that's not our law school now. And so I said, but you're not going to write that they're making a mistake, are you, President Smithsonian guy? He says, don't worry about it, young man. But through that process and that interview, I came to recognize that the University of Hawaii Law School from 1977 through when I went in the 90s got on the map. And it got on the map with names of young professors who came out here very boldly to a very small startup school in the 1970s and 80s, like Van Dyke, like Callies, like Roth, like Barkey. Those people put our law school on the map. And as a member of the class of 99, and for all the University of Hawaii Law School graduates here, I want to thank all of you for taking care of us and teaching us how to be lawyers. Thanks to everyone for coming. Let me do one quick anecdote. When Robert Thomas asks you to do something, my career path has largely been say, okay, I'll do it. And my first task in an eminent domain case was in a 6-week eminent domain trial in Kona. And Robert says, we got to do a motion to eliminate from one of the experts. And I looked, and it was Professor David Callies. And we want to exclude him as an expert. And so I'm like, okay, so I'm typing a motion to Professor David Callies. You can't say he's not qualified. You can't say he's not competent. You can't say he's not like the man in land use. And so it was a very short motion, and I just said, the judge, and it was Judge Ronald Ibarra, for those of you who know Judge Ibarra, is the legal expert in his courtroom. And so when I had an eminent domain case a couple years later, the very first expert that I hired, sorry Sharon Lovejoy, was Professor David Callies. Because I don't ever want to do a motion to eliminate again to exclude him. Anyway, thank you. We have the lobby for another half hour. We have food and wine. Please drink up, because otherwise I got to take it back up to Damon Key. Okay? Thank you. And we validate, so if you park, we validate, so don't forget.
Two announcements. First, anyone who has been a student of David Callies, we ask you to come forward. Professor Callies would like a photograph with all of us. Second, the speakers. We are going to, on the agenda, don't leave. We're going to have a similar picture. So please come forward if you are a student, we're a student of David Callies.
Robert, can we do the speakers right now first?
Okay.
Well, that's not true. Not our. But they only wanted $1 in fraud damages. So.
They weren't offended by that.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, thanks. We're going to do the speakers first. I was on the wild. I just came in.
You just got back.
Yeah.